Hi, I'm Michael Ray Jeffries, and I'm running for Selectman here in Lunenburg. So I want to take a couple minutes to give a little bit of background about myself and also some of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do once I'm elected to be Selectman. You know, for me, the story really starts on March 28th of 2003. I was deployed. I was in Kuwait, and I was working in a hospital. And this isn't a story I like to share too often, but I think it's quite relevant for this role. So I was working in a hospital and working in triage, and it was a very hectic time. This was the primary hospital that was operational during the very beginning of the war. And we had a soldier that came in that was unconscious. And going through and looking through the bandages, we were able to locate the military ID card. And this soldier was born the same day as me, same year as me. We had, the same birthday. And within a couple of hours, that soldier had passed away. And it really struck me. I was 20 years old. I was, a month away from turning 21. And it struck me because I think that was the first time that I really felt how fragile life is. And I made a commitment to myself and to everyone around me that I would do everything I could to ensure that I am protecting life and liberty. And I think, I'm sharing this story because this brings me to now. As I look over the course of my life, I have been very focused on public safety as well as health, and ensuring that people are able to have the life that they want to have and are protected. Life is very fragile. So here in Lunenburg, what does that mean for us as a community? It starts really with the schools. We have great school system here in town. We have educators that are really committed to the schools, to the students, but we also have parents that are very involved, that are very engaged, that are coming to the bake sales, that are participating in the PTO, that are coming to parent-teacher conferences, that are really making our community a community. And we have to continue to invest in our families. Because at the end of the day, what is this really all about? It's about the fact that there's someone in your life that you love, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your children, your parents. There's someone in your life that you love, and you want them to be protected, and you want them to live in a community in which they are valued. And I think that, why I'm running for office is this is an extension of what I've done over the course of my life. When we talk about public safety here in town, most people are surprised to learn that after 6 p.m. at night, coverage is pretty spotty, which means that if you have an emergency, such as a heart attack, such as you have a loved one that goes into a diabetic coma or has a stroke, or any of those really tragic things that require an immediate response, sometimes we have to wait for people to come from their homes, to come to the station, to get the equipment, to get the vehicles, in order to provide us with those bare necessities. I'm running so that we can do a better job, that we can protect our interests, our residents, our lives, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just during regular business hours. I'm running so that we can protect our kids, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not just when they're at school, but when they're home, when they're on the bus, and when they're with you. The other thing that really is important here as we think about, for me, as we think about our town, as we think about our community, as we think about our region, seniors, we are all living much longer, healthier, happier lives. And that's something to celebrate. We should be celebrating that, grandma is ticking till about 100 these days, and I think that these are all positive things. But some of the shifts that have happened that we haven't accounted for is grandma is living in her home now for 20 years longer than grandma was living 30, 40 years ago. So what do we do as a community to help make sure that our grandparents who many of our grandparents in this town who've paid for these schools, who've paid for the roads, who've paid for our libraries, who've paid for our public safety, and now when they are the most vulnerable, we have to do more for them. So I've looked into what the rebates and what the abatements are for seniors, and most don't qualify. And the reason for that is if you are a homeowner with more than about $64,000 a year, more than $64,000 in assets, then you do not qualify for either the $313 or the $750 rebate. What concerns me are that we have citizens and residents in town who are saying that their taxes are higher than their mortgages ever were. So what do we do about that? I think now is the time to get creative with finding sources of revenue. One of the ideas that I've put out, and I encourage you to go to my website, www.michaelrayjeffries.com. And there you'll see focuses, you'll see a little bit more on the bio for me. You also have some contact information, some events that are coming up. But one of the things that's there is as I talk about seniors, and I go over all the different rebates and abatements that are available for seniors. And I mentioned that, we have great land in town. What if we took, let's say, 20 acres of town land and built a solar farm, and just use that money to offset the taxes for people over 70? These are things that we can do. These are things that we should do. And I'm running so that we will do them. I'm running for selectman, to also add in I believe that the current board is doing okay. I think that what we need is we need a more professional board. We need a more forward-thinking board. That's not to swipe at anyone currently on the board. It's simply to state that what's really important for all of our leaders is to sit at the table and to treat everyone with respect. Sometimes even coming through this process, we get swiped at. It happens. And I think that we have to just take it and keep moving forward. And I hope to add, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, that forward-thinking approach to finding revenues. We have all these creative ideas for things that we can do, but it all comes down to money. And we have to stop hitting the taxpayer every time we want to do things for the taxpayer. There are other ways that we can find money to get things done to better our community. So thank you for the time today. Thank you for listening to what I had to say. Again, I want to encourage you to go to www.michaelrayjeffries.com, and I look forward to seeing you at the polls and around town. Have a good day.
Hi, I'm Katey Adams, and I'm running for Selectman. I was invited here by the Public Access Cable Committee to introduce myself, and I will start by talking about briefly my childhood. I grew up in Lunenburg, and so my parents still live in town, and my brother is raising 3 children here with his wife, and my sister's raising 2 children here with her husband, and she's due with a 3rd on July 4th. My civic activity began in Lunenburg in high school. I graduated high school in 1999, and I was class president junior and senior year. In 2004, I graduated from Massachusetts College of Pharmacy with my Doctor of Pharmacy. And in 2007, I left the workforce to raise my twins, and that's when I returned to Lunenburg. I now have 4 children in the Lunenburg Public Schools. And I'll just go now to a little bit of background on how I got involved in town government. I think it was January 2017, there was an intruder incident in the Turkey Hill Elementary School. And from that, we learned a couple of things. One was that the Turkey Hill Elementary School didn't have surveillance cameras, and nor did the new primary school. There was also a delayed response from the police department that day. There wasn't somebody who could immediately respond to the incident. So those series of events caused me to start advocating for some changes with student safety and security. And what I did first was with my neighbor, we started going to school committee meetings and Board of Selectmen meetings to advocate for the surveillance cameras, which then led to going to Finance Committee meetings to advocate for increased funding for public safety so that we could have a school resource officer. So when we started school in August 2017, both schools that didn't have surveillance cameras had them installed, and we did start the school year with a school resource officer. So that process was very fulfilling, and while I was going to meetings, I started to become very interested in local town government, how it functioned. It was almost primarily run by volunteers, and I wanted to see how everything connected. So I started attending just about any meeting I could so I could see how everything interconnected. It was a series of planning board meetings that I went to where I learned about a proposal to possibly sell municipal land, or at least put it out to bid. And this is when I began advocating for municipal land preservation. That's where I started to not just advocate on my own, but started to reach out to the community and meet more people. From that point is where we worked on this concept of common ground, because we were talking about municipal land and we were talking about physical common ground. And as a child, anybody who was here, you know, going back 20 or 30 years, we had places where we did our bonfires, places where we had Lunenburg country festivals, and a lot of our physical common ground is gone. Common ground is where athletes come together on a sports field, or students come together in a school. But as an actual community to have social, emotional common ground, I really feel we have to maintain our physical space in town center. And so that became something that I worked on throughout the summer and in the fall. And the common ground concept really started to launch deeper thinking into the town overall. And my friend and I, we were lucky to attend an event in it was earlier this winter, and we actually got to talk to Governor Baker about our common ground plans and ideas. And during that meeting with him, he talked about the idea of necessary friction. And so during advocacy is when you come up with the fact that there's opposing ideas in town, and then you find the common ground. And so it's that advocating and meeting the community has been a really great process, and I look forward to continuing that. When the school committee nominated me to serve on the Charter Review Committee in August, I got to really launch into learning even more about town government. And when you study our type of town government, it's open town meeting government. And you have your executive branch, which is the 5 selectmen, and then you have the legislative branch, which is the entire town, or all the registered voters. And so when you really study, both sides can have a big impact on town. As a member of the legislative branch, anybody can public comment, they can have a citizen petition article, they can engage and advocate for any topic, they can encourage attendance to town meeting. And I've really enjoyed participating in that. Leading up to the election, I had to look at both options and see where it was that I saw myself. And I've attended every selectmen's meeting for over a year now, except for one I missed. And I just enjoy being there. And so I thought now was the time to hopefully participate in the executive side as a selectman. And I hope you come out and vote on May 19th. And I hope you please consider voting for myself, Katey Adams, for selectman. Thank you.
Hello, citizens of Lunenburg. My name is Dave Passios. I'm one of the candidates running for the open seat on the Board of Selectmen for the ballot on May 19th. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Lunenburg. My family came to Lunenburg the year that actually the building that I'm in right now, the T.C. Passios building, was opened for the first school year. I was born that year, and 64 years later, here we are. I've dedicated myself to Lunenburg all of my life, lived in Lunenburg all of my life, short stint in college for a couple of years, but the rest of the time I have been here in town. My extended family, beyond the Passios family, was the entire farming community in Lunenburg. I grew up next to the poultry vegetable farm on Highland Street owned by the Hanos, a Finnish family well known in the farming community. And I spent a lot of time with them traveling around to other farms and to farm events. So I consider the farm community as much my family as my biological family. I actually went to college for agriculture, spent a few years in agriculture up in Westminster working for the Foster family, also a Lunenburg family, who at the time They still own, actually, the Old Mill Restaurant, and they had a farm up on Battles Road in Westminster. Beyond that, I went to the United Cooperative Farmers Feed Mill in Fitchburg, worked there for 14 years, leaving as my last years as manager of that facility. And spent a few years after that self-employed, working on renovations and building houses here in the Lunenburg, Fitchburg, Leominster area with another resident of Lunenburg. That was during one of the downturns in the economy back in the early 90s. Since the mid-90s, I've been employed by a concrete landscape manufacturing company in Westford, Massachusetts, and working in production and now in purchasing, inventory control, and production management. So a lot of people have asked me who I am because the Passios name, as I said, is not as well known today as it was back in the 60s and 70s. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight as to who I am. I'm the middle child of 5. As I said, my parents came here in 53, 54. Both educators, well-known educators in their own right, and they gave us the opportunities as 5 kids growing up in the 60s and 70s to find our way into the world. Mine has been more or less the last 30 or 40 years in manufacturing, and I really enjoy it. Also, alongside of that, I've been involved with town government for many, many years, attending town meetings, Board of Selectmen's meetings. The last 10 years especially, many of you know me for being up at the microphone and probably stretching town meeting out way longer than we'd like to, but I think it's important for the citizens to be able to get up and be heard. So I've been trying to lead by example by doing that, to show you that an individual citizen can make changes if they're do their homework and they're dedicated to the cause that they'd like to bring forward. My reasons for running for the Board of Selectmen, I was a late entry at actually the last couple of days that we could put in nomination papers. The reason I held off hoping that we would have a candidate that I could fully support for the open position on the Select Board and continue to work from the sidelines as I have for the last many years. As the deadline date approached, I didn't feel that had happened, so I decided it was time to jump in. I appreciate the signatures from the people that allowed me to get my nomination papers filled out very quickly and turned in. Since then, I have been campaigning quietly in the background, staying out of the controversies on social media as much as absolutely possible, and trying to run kind of an old-fashioned campaign, get around, get out, talk to people, get my information out there. I believe I was the first one out there with my thoughts as to what we should do with the 5 public buildings that we've been talking about, it seems like forever. Turns out, after last night's Selectmen's meeting, my ideas are not all that far-fetched from what many of the Board of Selectmen brought forward in their meeting last night. I think with all the meetings that we've had, the charrettes and the meeting at the Senior Center, we've got a little bit of a consensus as to where the town wants to be, but I think some more input from the individual citizens will be helpful, and I'm hopeful that the Board of Selectmen will hold some more public meetings and come forward with a plan that we can all be happy with. Also part of a group that's sponsoring an article, number 24, on the town meeting warrant coming up this Saturday on May 5th. And one of the basic reasons we brought that article forward was to finally bring a proposal to you, the citizens. And it may not be a perfect proposal, you may not all agree with it, I know some of you do agree with it, but at least it's a proposal brought forward that we can talk about on town meeting floor, discuss, debate. If you agree with our plans based on this article, that's fine. If it's the prerogative of the people at town meeting that that's not what they want to do, then I hope we hear where we want to go with the buildings in town from you people. And as I've said at many hearings on this article, we will rework it and come back to you either in the fall or next spring with a proposal that we feel that you'll be happy with, or that you've told us you're already happy with. So that's that part of the situation with the town buildings and the article. In regards to my goals as a selectman, there's a number of areas that I think there could be some vast improvement with the select board, including their interaction with the individual citizens. And I understand it's a little difficult to have citizens come up at the last minute and question what you've worked on for 6, 8, 12 months, feeling that that was a direction that the general citizenry wanted to go, and then find out, oh, well, gee, I guess they don't. But it's our right as citizens to speak up. And if we're not happy with our elected officials, then we should say something to our elected officials. And if at the end of their term, if we're not happy with what they've done for that term, then the ballot is the place to make our ideas known and let our elected officials know that we've not been happy and vote for somebody else. This election is, with 3 running, it's pretty exciting. It's the first time in a long time that we've had a contested race in Lunenburg, especially for Board of Selectmen. I see it as, basically 3 options that are out there with the 3 candidates. One, I very honestly and strongly feel that it will be business as usual. If you're happy with business as usual, then you vote for that individual. Given the other 2 candidates that would be left after that, I feel I'm the most qualified to take the position and be a representative for you, the citizens. I neglected to mention also that I have been an elected member of the Board of Health for the last 7 years. I finished off 1 term, and I've done 2 full 3-year terms. So I've been involved in town government as an elected official. I've also got a working relationship with all of the boards and commissions. I've tried to visit everybody.